A viper bit him on the thigh, and she had to save him in the only way possible, white heavy check mark. Sunlight streamed through the thin curtains, casting soft patterns on the wooden floor. He could hear the distant chirping of birds and the gentle rustling of leaves outside. It was the kind of morning that made a person feel alive and peaceful, as if the whole world had paused just for a moment. Mia, who was still half asleep, turned toward him with a sleepy smile. Her dark hair fell messily across her face, and her eyes sparkled with the same excitement that had brought them to this remote forest. "Morning," she murmured, her voice soft but cheerful. "Are you awake so early again?" Alex grinned. "I couldn't help it. Look at this place. I just want to get out there and see everything before the sun climbs too high." He got out of bed, careful not to disturb her, and peeked through the window. The forest stretched endlessly, a sea of green swaying gently in the morning breeze. Sunlight filtered through the canopy, creating golden patches on the forest floor. It was a view that seemed almost unreal, like a painting brought to life. Mia stretched and finally got out of bed. She slipped on her hiking boots and adjusted the straps on her backpack. "Okay, Mr. Explorer, let's see what adventures await us today," she said, tying her hair back. There was a playful glint in her eyes, but underneath it, she felt a flutter of nervous excitement. Hiking in such a secluded area was thrilling, but part of her knew the forest could be unpredictable. She didn't mention it. She didn't want to spoil the moment. The cabin they had rented was small but cozy, tucked away near a narrow dirt trail that led into the heart of the forest. It was isolated enough to feel private, but not so far that they couldn't get help if they really needed it. That sense of seclusion was part of the charm, and it was why they had chosen this spot for their weekend getaway. The city life they had left behind felt miles away, and for a moment, all the stress and noise of daily life seemed like a distant memory. They packed a small bag with essentials: water bottles, sandwiches, a first aid kit, a camera, and a couple of maps of the area. Alex insisted on taking a compass too, claiming it was just in case, though Mia suspected he enjoyed the idea of pretending they were explorers on a real expedition. They stepped outside, and the cool morning air filled their lungs. Every breath seemed to wash away the tension in their bodies, leaving only a sense of anticipation. The trail was narrow, lined with tall trees whose branches intertwined overhead, creating a natural roof of leaves. Sunlight pierced through in scattered beams, illuminating patches of moss and tiny flowers that peeked out from the undergrowth. Birds flitted from branch to branch, singing songs that echoed through the forest. Alex paused every few steps to take photographs, crouching to capture a spider's web glistening with morning dew or a cluster of mushrooms nestled under a fallen log. Mia walked beside him, smiling at his enthusiasm. She loved how he noticed the small details, the little wonders that most people overlooked. She sometimes thought he saw the world differently, more vividly than anyone else. She followed his lead but also kept an eye on the trail, careful of uneven ground and hidden roots that could easily trip someone. They laughed often, sharing jokes and playful banter, letting the joy of the moment fill the air around them. After about an hour of walking, they reached a small clearing. Sunlight poured in, warming the earth beneath their feet. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, and the quiet was almost perfect, broken only by the occasional call of a bird. They decided to rest for a while, sitting on a large rock that felt smooth under their hands. Alex took out the sandwiches and they shared a simple breakfast, laughing as a squirrel boldly approached, hoping for crumbs. "Can you believe this place?" Alex asked, gazing around. "It feels like it's untouched by time, like we've stepped into another world," Mia nodded. "It's beautiful. I can see why you wanted to come here. It's peaceful, really peaceful." She leaned back, letting the sun warm her face. For a few moments, they simply sat in silence, soaking in the calm and the quiet, feeling as though nothing could touch them here. After resting, they decided to continue deeper into the forest. The trail narrowed further, winding through denser trees and thicker undergrowth. The sounds of the forest grew louder in some ways, the chirping of birds, the rustling of leaves, and the distant gurgle of a stream hidden from view. The air smelled fresher here, tinged with the earthy aroma of damp soil and decaying leaves. Every step felt like a new discovery, as though the forest was revealing its secrets just for them. As they walked, Alex pointed out interesting plants and insects. "Look at this one," he said, crouching to examine a small flower. "I've never seen anything like it before." "Isn't it amazing?" Mia smiled, taking a photo for him. "You have such an eye for detail. I would have walked past it without noticing." They continued like this for a while, lost in their own world of exploration and curiosity. The trail occasionally dipped into shallow valleys or climbed small rises, giving them glimpses of the forest stretching endlessly in every direction. It was a sense of freedom they both cherished, far from the routines and pressures of daily life. Mia noticed how relaxed Alex seemed. His laughter was lighter, his movements more fluid, and his eyes sparkled with excitement. She felt a surge of happiness watching him enjoy the moment so fully. But even in this serenity, a small voice in her mind reminded her that nature could be unpredictable. Snakes, insects, sudden changes in weather, they had to be careful. She pushed the thought aside, determined to focus on the joy of the day rather than the dangers lurking silently. They stopped again when they reached a tiny stream cutting across their path. The water was crystal clear, rushing over smooth stones with a soothing sound. Alex kicked off his boots and dipped his feet in, sighing contentedly. "This is perfect," he said. "I could stay here forever." Mia rolled up her pant legs and joined him, letting the cool water wash over her feet. They sat side by side, laughing as the water splashed around them. A few small fish darted between the rocks, and Alex excitedly tried to catch one with his hands, but it was too fast. Mia laughed at his antics, feeling completely at ease in his company. It was one of those moments that felt eternal, like time had slowed down just for them. After resting by the stream, they continued along the trail, following its winding path deeper into the forest. The trees grew taller and more densely packed, and the undergrowth became thicker. Sunlight struggled to reach the forest floor, creating dappled shadows that danced as the leaves swayed. Every now and then, Alex would point out something interesting, a uniquely shaped rock, a bird's nest tucked high in a tree, or a patch of wildflowers growing in a hidden nook. Mia noticed the serenity of the forest began to mix with a sense of mystery. It was quiet but not silent. There was a rhythm to the sounds around them that seemed almost alive. The rustling of leaves, the distant chirping of birds, and the faint gurgle of water created a melody that accompanied their every step. She felt a mixture of awe and respect for the environment they were in, realizing how small they were compared to the vastness of nature. As they moved further, Alex suddenly stopped. He squatted down to examine a patch of grass along the side of the trail. "Look at this," he said, pointing at a brightly colored insect crawling along a leaf. Mia crouched beside him, fascinated by the tiny creature. It was delicate and beautiful, its wings glinting in the sunlight. Moments like these reminded them both why they had come, to experience the raw, unfiltered beauty of the forest, away from distractions and screens. They stood up again, brushing off their pants and continuing their hike. Alex's energy was infectious, and Mia found herself feeling more adventurous than usual. She climbed over fallen logs, stepped across shallow streams, and carefully maneuvered through thick patches of foliage, keeping pace with him. Their laughter echoed through the forest, mingling with the natural sounds around them, creating a harmony that made the forest feel even more alive. The morning passed like this, filled with small discoveries, laughter, and quiet moments of appreciation. They were completely immersed in the forest, unaware of the hidden dangers that nature sometimes held. Alex was so engrossed in examining a large tree trunk covered in moss that he didn't notice a patch of tall grass ahead. Mia's heart skipped a beat as she instinctively took a small step forward, sensing something unusual. She shook her head, trying to dismiss the uneasy feeling, attributing it to her imagination. They continued along the trail, still laughing and talking, both of them feeling a sense of peace that was rare in their daily lives. It was the kind of day they would remember forever, a day where the world seemed simple and beautiful, and where they were free to enjoy each other's company without any distractions. The forest had welcomed them, and they had embraced it in return, unaware that a sudden moment of danger was waiting just a few steps ahead. The forest was calm, almost too calm, as Alex and Mia continued along the winding trail. Birds flitted above their heads, and the sunlight streamed through the trees in soft, golden beams. Alex was still bubbling with energy, moving from one small discovery to the next. He crouched down to examine a cluster of mushrooms, poked at the bark of a moss-covered tree, and even tried to identify the songs of distant birds. Mia watched him with a smile, feeling happy and relaxed. She had always admired Alex's curiosity and how he could find excitement in the simplest things. As they moved further into the forest, the trail began to narrow and the undergrowth grew denser. Small bushes brushed against their legs, and the soft earth beneath their feet became uneven. It was the kind of trail where one had to pay attention with every step. Mia noticed the change but remained calm, keeping her focus on the path while letting Alex wander slightly ahead. She trusted his judgment, but part of her couldn't shake a feeling of unease. Alex paused for a moment to take a photograph of a delicate fern. He leaned forward slightly, balancing himself on one leg as he adjusted the camera. Mia's eyes followed him, noticing the joy and concentration on his face. He was completely absorbed in the moment, unaware of the world beyond the lens. She felt a warmth in her chest watching him, feeling lucky to share this adventure together. Suddenly, a sharp cry of pain shattered the quiet of the forest. "Ah, Mia, help me!" Alex's voice was filled with shock and fear. Mia's heart jumped into her throat. She ran toward him, her mind racing. When she reached him, she saw that his face had twisted in pain. Alex was clutching his thigh, and there was a small, distinct wound where something had bitten him. The grass around him swayed slightly, and Mia's eyes widened as she realized what had happened. A viper, hidden in the tall grass, had struck him. Its fangs had pierced his skin, and the venom was already beginning to work its way into his system. Mia's first instinct was panic, but she forced herself to stay calm. She knew that showing fear could make Alex more anxious, and that could worsen the situation. She took a deep breath, scanning the area quickly. The viper had retreated, disappearing into the underbrush. She couldn't see it anymore, and that small relief allowed her to focus entirely on Alex. Alex's breathing was rapid, and his face was pale. "It had bit me," he stammered, his voice trembling. "Mia, it hurts so much." He tried to stand, but his legs were weak, and he collapsed back onto the forest floor. Mia knelt beside him immediately, placing a hand on his shoulder to steady him. She could feel the panic rising in her chest, but she pushed it down, reminding herself that she had to act quickly and decisively. "Stay still, Alex," she said firmly but gently. "I'm right here. You're going to be okay. We just need to stay calm and think." Her voice was steady, even though her heart was pounding. She reached for the first aid kit in her backpack, quickly rummaging through its contents. Bandages, antiseptic, and other supplies spilled out onto the ground, and she grabbed what she needed. Mia inspected the bite carefully. The swelling was already beginning, and the redness was spreading. She knew that venom could spread rapidly through the bloodstream, and every second counted. She felt a cold shiver run down her spine but refused to let fear control her. Alex needed her, and she had to be strong. "Don't move your leg," she instructed, her voice calm but firm. I'm going to clean the bite and try to slow the venom. You have to trust me. Alex nodded weakly, gritting his teeth against the pain. He tried to speak, but Mia gently put a hand on his chest. Save your energy. Focus on breathing slowly. I've got this. Mia carefully cleaned the bite area with antiseptic. The small puncture wounds were already beginning to bruise and swell, and she could see the venom spreading under the skin. She remembered reading about emergency care for snake bites, and although she had never faced this situation before, she had retained enough knowledge to act. She knew that panicking could be fatal. Next, Mia created a makeshift tourniquet above the bite to slow the flow of venom. She used a strip of cloth from her backpack, tying it securely but not too tightly, careful not to cut off blood flow completely. Her hands trembled slightly, but she focused on Alex, encouraging him to remain calm. You're doing great. Just hold still. We're going to get through this. Alex's eyes were wide with fear and pain. Mia, it's burning. I feel so weak. His voice quivered and sweat beaded on his forehead. Mia held his hand, trying to reassure him with every word. I know, love, I know it hurts, but I'm here. You're not alone. I'm not leaving you. We will get through this together. The forest seemed to hold its breath around them. The usual sounds of birds and rustling leaves faded into the background, leaving only the urgent rhythm of Alex's breathing and the rapid beat of Mia's heart. She knew she had to act quickly before the venom reached his bloodstream in large quantities. Mia remembered the last step she had learned from a first aid guide: careful suction of venom. It was a risky move, but it could help slow the venom's effect until they reached professional help. She took a deep breath, steeling herself, and gently began the process, being extremely careful not to worsen the wound. Alex winced but remained still, trusting her completely. Time seemed to stretch, each second feeling like a minute. Mia spoke softly to Alex, distracting him from the pain. She reminded him of little things, the silly jokes they had shared earlier, the photos they had taken, the memories they were making. Her words kept him focused, keeping panic at bay while she continued her careful, life-saving actions. After what felt like an eternity, the swelling seemed to slow slightly, and Alex's breathing became steadier. Mia finally allowed herself a small sigh of relief. She knew that this was only the first step. They still needed professional medical attention, but she had managed to stabilize him enough to make the journey possible. "Can you move your legs?" she asked gently, testing him. Alex tried slowly and carefully, wincing with the effort. Mia supported him, helping him sit up and guiding him to a safer part of the trail where the ground was more even. She knew that every step from here had to be taken with extreme caution, both for his safety and to prevent the venom from spreading further. As they prepared to move, Mia's mind raced with plans. The nearest clinic was hours away, and the terrain was rough. But she refused to give up. She would carry him if necessary, navigate the trail, and do whatever it took to save him. Fear and exhaustion were present, but determination burned brighter. Alex needed her, and that was all that mattered. The forest that had seemed so peaceful earlier now felt different. Shadows seemed longer, the sounds sharper, and every movement in the undergrowth made Mia's senses heighten. Yet amid the fear, she remained focused, using her knowledge, her courage, and her love to guide her actions. Alex leaned against her shoulder, trusting her completely, and she felt a surge of responsibility and strength she hadn't known she possessed. With a careful plan in mind, Mia prepared to move Alex, step by step, toward safety. She held his hand, spoke words of encouragement, and reminded him of the beautiful moments they had shared that morning, grounding them both in hope. Every step was painstaking, but every step was vital. They were fighting against time, against nature, against the venom that threatened to take him, and Mia refused to let it win. Even in the shadow of danger, their bond grew stronger. Alex's trust in Mia and her unwavering courage created a quiet strength between them. The forest, once a place of beauty and tranquility, had become a test of their resilience. their courage, and their love, and Mia was determined to succeed, no matter the cost. The forest seemed endless as Mia helped Alex move slowly along the trail. His leg was painful and swollen, and every step sent sharp reminders of the viper's bite through his body. Mia could feel the tension in his muscles and the rapid beat of his heart. Each movement required careful planning. One wrong step could worsen the injury. She realized the gravity of the situation. They were miles away from the nearest help, and if she didn't act decisively, Alex could be in serious danger. Mia's mind raced. She remembered the first aid guide she had read weeks before, the one she had always thought was just general knowledge. Now, every detail mattered. She had cleaned the bite, slowed the venom with a makeshift tourniquet, and performed what little suction she could. But it wasn't enough. She knew venom could spread quickly, and she had to make a desperate decision, one that scared her but was their only chance. "Alex," she said gently, kneeling beside him and holding his face in her hands so he could see her eyes. "I need you to trust me completely. What I'm going to do, it's the only way to make sure you're safe." Alex's breathing was uneven, but he nodded weakly. "I trust you, Mia. I know you'll save me." The words gave her a strange mix of warmth and fear. She couldn't afford to falter. Not now, not ever. Mia looked around quickly. The forest was quiet, the shadows from the trees stretching long as the sun climbed higher in the sky. There was no one in sight, no sign of another hiker or a ranger who could help. The nearest medical facility was hours away, and with the venom already in Alex's system, they didn't have time to waste. Her hands shook slightly as she reached into her backpack for extra supplies. Bandages, antiseptic, and cloth strips were all laid out on the forest floor. She took a deep breath, centering herself. Fear was natural, but panic would be deadly. Every thought, every movement had to be precise. Mia decided to immobilize Alex's leg more securely. She wrapped his thigh gently but firmly, ensuring that the venom spread would slow as much as possible. The process was uncomfortable for him, and he winced repeatedly, but she soothed him with soft words. "I know it hurts, I know it's hard, but you're doing so well. Just stay still and trust me." After securing his leg, Mia considered the next step carefully. She knew that the only way to increase his chances of survival was to control the venom and maintain his calm until help arrived. This meant keeping him awake, focused, and physically stable. She spoke softly to him, distracting him with stories, memories, and jokes, trying to pull his mind away from the pain and fear. As they continued moving slowly through the forest, Mia realized that exhaustion was setting in for both of them. Alex's strength was fading, and her own arms ached from supporting him. Every few steps she had to stop and let him rest, encouraging him to breathe deeply and stay conscious. The fear of losing him pressed down on her chest, but she refused to let it dominate her thoughts. She had to stay strong, and she had to think clearly. They reached a small clearing, a slightly flatter piece of ground where Mia could set Alex down more comfortably. She helped him sit against a large tree, the rough bark supporting his back. He leaned heavily on her, closing his eyes for a moment. "I'm scared, Mia," he admitted softly. "I know, love," she whispered, holding his hand. "I'm scared too, but fear won't help us. I'm right here, and I won't let anything happen to you. We'll get through this together." Her words were steady, even though inside, her mind was racing with possibilities and contingency plans. Mia checked the bite again. The swelling had increased slightly, and there was a faint discoloration around the puncture marks. She could feel the urgency of the situation in every beat of her heart. She knew she had to do more than just wait and hope. They needed a strategy to keep the venom contained and Alex alive until they could get professional help. After a few moments of rest, she decided they had to move again. The trail ahead was uneven, but staying in one place for too long could be dangerous if the venom spread faster than they expected. She helped Alex stand, supporting his weight as they took careful, slow steps along the path. Every movement was calculated, every step deliberate. As they moved, Mia thought about the techniques she had learned for snakebite emergencies. She remembered that keeping the patient calm, limiting movement, and slowing the venom were critical. She had already done what she could for the bite itself, but she realized there was one more thing she could do to improve his chances: constant monitoring and mental support. She had to keep him talking, alert, and focused on something other than the pain. "Alex, remember that hike last summer when we got lost near the river?" she asked, smiling despite the tension. "You tried to navigate with that tiny map, and we ended up in that muddy clearing. You looked like a mess, but we laughed so hard." Alex smiled faintly, a small glimmer of light in his eyes. "Yeah, I remember. We got soaked and laughed for hours." "Exactly," Mia said. "We've survived tricky situations before and we'll survive this too. You just have to stay with me." Her voice was firm, yet gentle, a mixture of command and reassurance. She could feel the bond between them strengthening, a silent agreement that they would not let fear take control. Hours seemed to pass in the forest as they slowly made their way along the trail. Mia supported Alex with all her strength, sometimes carrying part of his weight, sometimes guiding his steps over rocks and roots. The sun climbed higher, casting dappled light that danced on the forest floor. Every sound, every shadow made her senses alert, but she kept her focus on Alex, watching for signs of worsening symptoms. At one point, Alex's breathing grew shallow and his lips paled slightly. Mia stopped immediately, helping him sit against a tree. "You're okay," she whispered, even as panic nibbled at her confidence. "Just breathe slowly. I've got you. I'm not leaving you." She spoke to him as if her words alone could fight the venom, and in a way they did. Her calmness became his anchor, a lifeline that kept him grounded when fear threatened to take over. She knew that the longer they stayed conscious and calm, the better his chances of survival. So she engaged him in conversation, asking about their favorite memories, future plans, and silly hypothetical situations. "If you could have any superpower right now, what would it be?" she asked, forcing a laugh. Alex managed a weak smile. "Teleportation, so we wouldn't have to walk through this forest." Mia chuckled softly, squeezing his hand. "Good choice. But until then, we'll take it one step at a time. You're stronger than you think." Mia's mind was constantly calculating. She knew that exhaustion could be deadly for someone in Alex's condition. She rationed their water carefully, ensuring they both stayed hydrated, and she adjusted the tourniquet when necessary to prevent further complications. She remained vigilant, constantly checking his pulse, watching his eyes and feeling the subtle changes in his body that could indicate worsening symptoms. Despite the pain and fear, a strange sense of resilience grew between them. Alex trusted her completely, and Mia found strength she didn't know she had. She realized that desperation could bring clarity and love could give courage. Every careful step, every word of encouragement, every handhold was a battle against the odds, but it was one they faced together. As the sun began its slow descent, painting the forest with golden and orange hues, Mia finally spotted a familiar landmark on the map they had brought. It was a small ranger station, not far from the trail, that might have a radio or someone who could help. Relief surged through her, but she didn't let her guard down. They were close, but the journey was not over yet. Mia adjusted her hold on Alex, whispering words of encouragement. "We're almost there, just a little further. I promise you'll be okay." Alex nodded weakly, finding strength in her voice, in her presence. The forest, which had seemed peaceful and inviting earlier, now felt like a battleground where courage, determination, and quick thinking were the only weapons against a hidden threat. Mia's mind and heart were fully engaged, refusing to allow fear or fatigue to dictate their fate. She was determined to save Alex, and she knew that her actions in these critical moments could make all the difference. Step by step, breath by breath, they moved closer to safety. Mia kept her eyes on the trail, her hands ready to support Alex at any moment, and her mind sharp, calculating every possibility. The forest may have hidden danger, but it could not hide the strength of human determination. And Mia was living proof of that strength. The forest trail stretched on, winding through dense trees and uneven ground. Mia's arms ached from supporting Alex, whose leg was swollen and painful from the viper bite. Every step was a challenge, but she refused to let exhaustion slow her down. She had a single goal: keep Alex alive and get him to help. Fear gnawed at her, but she pushed it aside, channeling every ounce of strength and focus into action. Alex's breathing was shallow and beads of sweat ran down his forehead. His face was pale, his eyes wide with pain, but he trusted Mia completely. I don't think I can walk much further," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Mia knelt beside him, placing her hands firmly on his shoulders. "You're going to be okay," she said, though her own heart raced. "We're going to get through this. I've got you. Just stay with me, okay?" Alex nodded weakly, finding comfort in her steady voice. Mia realized that walking was no longer the safest option. The trail was uneven, and every step risked worsening the venom's spread or causing another injury. She needed a more immediate, hands-on approach to stabilize him further before attempting to move any longer. She remembered everything she had read about snakebite emergencies: immobilizing the affected limb, slowing the spread of venom, monitoring vital signs, and if necessary, carefully removing venom. This was the moment where knowledge, courage, and quick thinking had to combine perfectly. She gently helped Alex lie down on the ground, positioning him so that his leg was slightly elevated and supported by a rolled-up jacket from her backpack. "We need to rest here for a bit," she explained softly. "It's safer this way, and I can help manage the bite more effectively." Alex's lips trembled as he tried to smile. I trust you," he said faintly. Mia took a deep breath, steadying herself. She cleaned the bite again with antiseptic, careful to remove any dirt or debris. The swelling had increased slightly, and she could see the faint bruising spreading around the puncture marks. She worked methodically, keeping her hands steady despite the fear rising in her chest. She whispered to Alex as she worked, telling him stories from their past adventures, reminding him of happy memories and distracting him from the sharp pain. Once the area was clean, Mia carefully adjusted the tourniquet she had made earlier. It needed to be tight enough to slow the venom, but not so tight as to cut off circulation entirely. She checked his pulse at the ankle, ensuring that blood flow was still present. Each adjustment was critical, and each decision carried weight. The life of the person she loved depended on her careful actions. Mia remembered another technique she had read about: controlled suction to remove venom. She knew it was risky, but also potentially life-saving. With a deep breath, she gently began the process, taking care not to damage the tissue or worsen the wound. Alex winced but remained still, trusting her entirely. His hand gripped hers tightly, a silent bond of trust and courage. The process was slow and painstaking. Every second mattered, every movement had to be precise. Mia spoke softly the entire time, keeping Alex engaged in conversation to prevent panic. "Remember our trip to the lake last year?" she asked. "We got completely drenched, but we laughed so much that day." Alex managed a weak smile. "Yeah, I remember, it was fun." "Exactly," Mia replied, squeezing his hand gently. "We've faced challenges before and we've always made it through. This is just another one and we'll get through it together." Time seemed to stretch endlessly as she worked. The forest, which had felt peaceful earlier, now seemed like a quiet battlefield. The usual sounds, birds chirping, leaves rustling, distant water, faded into the background, replaced by the urgent rhythm of Alex's breathing and her own racing heartbeat. Every action, every word, every touch had meaning. One mistake could cost precious time, or worse. After carefully performing suction, Mia reevaluated the situation. Alex was weaker than before, his energy fading, but he was stable for the moment. She knew that they couldn't remain on the forest floor forever. They needed to reach professional help, and the only way was to move slowly, steadily, and carefully. Mia adjusted the position of his leg once more, ensuring it was fully supported. She used her jacket and backpack to create a makeshift splint, preventing any unnecessary movement. Then, with determination burning in her chest, she began the process of guiding him along the trail again. Every step was calculated, with Mia supporting his weight and helping him avoid rocks, roots, and uneven ground. "Just one step at a time," she murmured. "We'll get there, I promise." Alex leaned on her heavily, his face pale and sweaty, but he trusted her completely. Mia could feel his small tremors of pain with each step, but she refused to let it slow them down. Her own muscles burned, her legs ached, and her heart pounded, but adrenaline and determination kept her going. As they moved, Mia realized that mental support was just as important as physical care. She kept Alex talking, engaging him in conversation to distract him from the pain and fear. "If you could go anywhere in the world right now, where would it be?" she asked. Alex managed a faint chuckle. "Somewhere with beaches, warm sand, and no snakes." Mia laughed softly, squeezing his hand. "Good choice. We'll get you there someday, but for now, focus on me, okay?" Step by step, they made progress. The sun began to sink lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Every movement required caution, but Mia refused to let frustration or fear slow them. She reminded herself constantly that this was a race against time, and patience was just as important as speed. At one point, Alex's breathing grew shallow again, and Mia stopped immediately. She knelt beside him, checking his pulse and monitoring his condition. "You're doing amazing," she whispered, her hands steady despite the fear threatening to overwhelm her. "Just breathe, I'm right here." She encouraged him to take slow, deliberate breaths, helping him regain focus and energy. Mia also paid attention to her own condition. She had been moving for hours, supporting Alex almost entirely on her own. Her arms and legs were sore, and fatigue threatened to slow her down, but she refused to give in. Every step mattered, every moment was critical, and she could not afford to let exhaustion compromise her judgment. As they continued, Mia scanned the forest carefully for any signs of help or a safer path. The map in her mind, the one she had studied before the trip, guided her as she navigated the twists and turns of the trail. Every decision was deliberate: which path to take, when to rest, how to support Alex without worsening the injury. It was exhausting, but her determination never wavered. Finally, after what felt like hours of slow, careful progress, Mia spotted a familiar landmark in the distance. It was a small clearing with a ranger's station tucked among the trees. Relief surged through her, but she did not let her guard down. They were close, but the journey was not over yet. One wrong step could undo everything they had done. Mia adjusted her hold on Alex, whispering words of encouragement. "We're almost there, just a little further. I promise you'll be okay." Alex nodded weakly, drawing strength from her voice and her presence. The forest, once a place of adventure and beauty, had become a battlefield where courage, knowledge, and quick thinking were the only weapons against danger. Mia's determination, calmness, and love for Alex had carried them this far. Every careful step, every measured action, every word of encouragement had made the difference between life and death. As they finally reached the clearing, Mia spotted the ranger station more clearly. She could see movement inside, a figure preparing to respond, someone who could help. Relief and hope surged through her, but she remained focused. They weren't safe yet. Alex still needed her, and she would not let him down. Mia helped Alex take the final few steps toward the station, supporting him fully and ensuring his leg remained stable. Each movement was deliberate, precise, and careful. The moment they reached the door of the station, Mia exhaled a long, steadying breath. They had made it. The ranger immediately saw Alex's condition and rushed to assist. Mia explained quickly what had happened, the viper bite, the symptoms, and the actions she had taken. The ranger nodded, impressed by her composure and quick thinking, and immediately called for medical support. Mia stayed by Alex's side, holding his hand, whispering words of comfort, and ensuring he remained calm until the professionals arrived. For the first time in hours, Mia allowed herself to feel a flicker of relief. She had acted decisively when it mattered most, using her courage, knowledge, and presence of mind to stabilize Alex and bring him to safety. The forest, which had been both beautiful and dangerous, had tested them to their limits. But together they had survived. The ambulance siren was faint but growing louder, cutting through the quiet of the forest clearing. Mia stayed close to Alex, holding his hand and keeping him calm as paramedics rushed to their side. The adrenaline that had carried her through hours of fear and exhaustion was finally ebbing, leaving a strange mix of relief and fatigue in its place. Her legs ached, her arms were sore, and every nerve in her body felt on edge, but seeing professionals take over brought a deep sense of reassurance. Alex's breathing had stabilized somewhat thanks to Mia's quick actions. The swelling on his leg was still present, but it had not spread dangerously. The paramedics assessed him swiftly, their practiced movements efficient and precise. They praised Mia quietly for her calmness and the first aid she had administered. "You did the right things," one of them said, checking her notes. "Your quick thinking probably saved his life." Mia nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and exhaustion, but her focus never left Alex. As the paramedics prepared to move him onto a stretcher, Mia helped support his upper body, whispering words of encouragement. "You're okay, love. You're safe now. We're almost at the hospital and you're going to be fine." Alex looked at her, his eyes tired but filled with gratitude. I don't know what I would have done without you," he said faintly. Mia smiled gently, brushing his damp hair from his forehead. "You don't have to think about that now. Focus on resting. We're together, and that's what matters." She held his hand as they lifted him into the ambulance, making sure he was comfortable and secure. The vehicle moved smoothly along the forest road, each bump reminding her of the hours they had just endured. Inside the ambulance, the paramedics continued their work, monitoring Alex's vital signs and administering the necessary treatment for snake venom. Mia sat beside him, never letting go of his hand. The forest that had been so beautiful, so serene earlier, now felt like a distant memory. The reality of what had just happened, the danger, the fear, and the life-threatening situation, settled in her mind. As the ambulance sped toward the hospital, Mia allowed herself to reflect on the events of the day. The morning had begun with laughter, curiosity, and the simple joy of exploring nature together. They had wandered the trails, discovering small wonders in the forest, completely immersed in the beauty around them. She remembered the sunlight filtering through the trees, the gentle rustle of leaves, the playful antics of birds and squirrels. It all felt like a lifetime ago, yet the memory was vivid and comforting. Then, in a single instant, everything had changed. A hidden danger, the viper, had attacked, turning a peaceful day into a fight for survival. The pain in Alex's leg, the fear in his eyes, and the knowledge that they were miles from help had pressed down on her like a heavy weight. But she had faced it head-on, relying on calmness, knowledge, and determination. The hours of careful first aid, support, and mental encouragement had been exhausting, but they had worked. Mia realized how fragile life could be. One moment they were laughing and exploring, the next they were fighting for survival. It was a lesson she would never forget. Life could change in an instant, and courage often meant acting even when fear was overwhelming. She looked at Alex, lying beside her, exhausted but alive, and felt a deep surge of love and protectiveness. Every second she had stayed calm, every careful movement she had made had mattered. By the time the ambulance reached the hospital, Alex was stable enough to be moved to an examination room. Doctors and nurses immediately took over, performing tests and monitoring his condition closely. Mia stayed in the waiting area, her hands still trembling slightly from the hours of tension. She tried to breathe slowly, letting the relief wash over her, but she also felt a sense of pride. She had faced fear, made critical decisions, and acted decisively when it mattered most. After what felt like hours, a doctor emerged from the examination room. "He's stable now," the doctor announced. "The venom was significant, but your quick action slowed its spread. He's going to recover fully. You did a remarkable job keeping him alive until we could provide professional care." Mia felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. Relief, exhaustion, and pride mingled into a complex but deeply satisfying emotion. She nodded quietly, absorbing the words. "Thank you," she said softly. I just wanted to make sure he was okay." The doctor smiled gently. "And you did. You saved him." When Mia was finally allowed into the room to see Alex, he was lying on the hospital bed, still pale but stable. He smiled weakly when he saw her. "I knew you'd save me," he whispered. "I never doubted it for a second." Mia sat beside him, holding his hand tightly. "I promised I wouldn't let anything happen to you," she said, "and I meant it. You're safe now and you're going to get better." Alex's lips curled into a faint smile and he squeezed her hand weakly. "I owe you my life," he murmured. "You don't owe me anything," Mia replied, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "We're in this together, and besides, I couldn't have done anything without you trusting me." As the hours passed, Alex began to regain more strength. The swelling in his leg decreased slightly under the care of the medical team, and his color returned gradually. Mia stayed by his side, talking to him, holding his hand and reassuring him. She realized that survival wasn't just about first aid. It was also about love, support, and emotional connection. Her presence had helped him stay calm, and in turn, his trust had given her the courage to act decisively. Later, when they were alone in the room, Mia reflected on the day. The forest that had seemed so peaceful in the morning had tested them in ways they could never have imagined. A hidden viper had transformed a joyful adventure into a life-threatening situation. But through courage, knowledge, and love, they had overcome it. Mia realized that fear was natural, but it could be controlled with calm thinking and decisive action. Alex, noticing her quiet reflection, reached for her hand. "You were amazing," he said softly. "I don't know what I would have done without you. You saved my life, Mia." She smiled gently, leaning against him. "We saved each other," she said. "You stayed calm, you trusted me, and together we made it. That's what matters." The experience left a lasting impact on both of them. They realized how fragile life could be and how quickly circumstances could change. But they also learned about resilience, courage, and the power of human connection. The forest had tested them, but it had also shown them the strength of their bond and their ability to face fear head-on. In the days that followed, Alex recovered steadily, and Mia remained by his side, offering support and care. They talked often about the events in the forest, reflecting on what had happened and what they had learned. Each conversation reinforced their appreciation for life and for each other. They both knew that the memory of that day, the fear, the courage, the love, and the relief, would stay with them forever. Even as Alex regained his strength, they both felt a quiet respect for nature and its hidden dangers. They knew that while the forest was beautiful, it could also be unpredictable. But rather than fear, their experience had instilled a sense of awareness, preparedness, and gratitude. They had faced a life-threatening situation and emerged stronger together. In the evenings, as the sun set outside the hospital window, they often held hands and talked quietly. The memories of laughter and exploration in the forest mingled with the tension and fear of the snakebite incident. They realized that life was fragile, but courage and love could overcome even the most terrifying challenges. Alex would later recount the story to friends and family, emphasizing Mia's bravery, calmness, and quick thinking. "She didn't panic for a second," he would say. "She knew what to do and she did it. She saved my life." Mia, always modest, would shrug and smile, but inside she carried a quiet pride, a deep understanding that love, courage, and presence of mind could truly make the difference between life and death. The forest adventure, which had begun with laughter, curiosity, and exploration, had ended with a powerful lesson. Life was precious, danger was real, and love was a force capable of guiding people through even the darkest moments. Mia and Alex left the hospital stronger, wiser, and more connected than ever, their bond forever shaped by the events of that fateful day. And as they finally returned home, they knew that the memory of the forest, the hidden viper, and the courage it demanded would remain with them forever, not as a source of fear, but as a testament to the strength of human determination and the power of love in the face of danger.